We're at the final week of the regular season in college football, guys. Conference Championship Game Week. This is my second favorite time of the year of all the sports calendar. Only thing that beats this is the first weekend of March Madness in college basketball. But for football, this is my favorite time of the year. The Conference Championship is it's the two best teams. Everything you work for in the offseason, everything you work through during the season, everything you work up to towards the end of the season, it just all comes to fruition here at the end. The cream will rise to the top, and the two best teams in each conference will duke it out to decide who is the best in their conference at the end of the year. Going into this last week, I'm 95-43 in my money line picks. Right about even in the spread picks. But this week it's going to be just the 10 games. It's going to go through all of them. We're going to go with the group of 5 first a little bit, and then go a little more detail with the Power 5 teams. And here we go, guys. First, we're going to start out with Conference USA Championship. New Mexico State Aggies go on the road at the Liberty Flames. Liberty is 12-0 coming into this week. They are the second Conference USA team ever to be ranked. Only one that was ranked before this, at least in the CFP, was UTSA in 2021. They were undefeated as well going into the last game of the week. This one says Liberty is 11-point favorite and the over-under is 56.5. Let's see, New Mexico going down the schedule. They lost to the only Tier 1 loss they have is to the same Liberty Flames, third week of the season, but they also have the Tier 2 win at Jordan-Hare at Auburn. Second to last week of the season, if y'all remember that, they won by 21 over Auburn. Meanwhile, on the other side, Liberty does not have a Tier 1 or a Tier 2 game played. As you can see, both teams at the bottom there, their current strength of schedules, two of the weakest in the entire country, 129 and 130 for each team. There's only 133 teams in the FBS, so that shows how easy these records have shown. And even though Liberty has a 12-0 record, you can see the record strength there, how hard it was to achieve. They are still ranked 29, so that means there's a lot of 2, 3, even 4-loss teams that actually had a harder time getting to that than Liberty getting to their 12-0 schedule. But either way, this is a touchdown and another field goal kind of game. New Mexico State's 5-25 as the away underdog. Liberty, the last 5 years, is 26-4 as the home favorite. I'm going to go with Liberty straight up in this game, guys, but I do think New Mexico State will cover the 11 points. Liberty is much better and offensively and defensively than New Mexico State. Actually, New Mexico State's better on defense. Liberty's way better on offense. I just think that the Aggies will cover this game. They got to 10 wins somehow. They can't be bad. And I think Liberty ultimately goes to 13-0 and finishes the season ranked in the final CFP rankings and claims their first ever Conference USA Championship. Next up, the MAC Championship. Toledo Rockets taking on the Miami, Ohio. What are they? The Red Hawks? Yes, I think they're the Red Hawks. This is Toledo is 11-1 and Miami's 10-2. Both teams have double-digit win totals, I think, for the third time ever. Only the third time ever in the MAC championship game, dating all the way back to the 2000. So this is a pretty prestigious matchup for the MAC. Toledo's an 8-point favorite. Over/under is 44. Miami, Ohio has played a couple of Tier 2 teams they've lost to. The only two teams they lost to have been at Miami first week of the season, and to this very same Toledo Rockets team at home third week in October. Every other team, though, they faced, they've had the second easiest strength of schedule. So, I mean, that just shows how bad the MAC has been, and their non-conference schedule also consisted of Massachusetts, Delaware State, and Cincinnati. So, and Toledo's schedule wasn't that much harder. The only thing that's different is they actually have a Tier 2 win. I do believe it was over this Miami, Ohio team on the road. That counts as a Tier 2 win. Their only loss of the season. Last-second field goal on the road, Week 1 to Illinois. Yes, Illinois did not make a bowl game. It's still a Big Ten team, though. So, if that was the only team they lost, and they've won 11 in a row since that game, I mean, all kudos to the Rockets, man. They've been shown they've covered every. I think they're one of the better teams to cover the spread. But obviously, in the last 5 years, they're 41-15 as the home favorite. Or this is actually a neutral site game. 41-15 as the favorite, while Miami's 16-21 as the underdog. So straight up, spread kind of thing. It's favoring Toledo, and I think I'm gonna go with Toledo straight up in this game. I think they have a legit chance. If it wasn't for the American Conference being so good, they would have a legit chance of being that Group of 5 representative. And I honestly think if they would have beat Illinois that first week of the season and been 12-0, possibly going 13-0, they would be right in the thick of things. But that loss kind of hurts them, especially with their weak strength of schedule. But at the same time, I think Miami Ohio will cover the 8-point spread. I think that's pretty big for these two teams, which finished, what was it, only a 4-point difference, only about a month and a half ago. So I think Miami's going to cover. I think Toledo will win outright though, and move to 12-1 and get their, I don't know exactly what number this is, but they'll win the MAC championship. Next game, going down south, the Sun Belt Championship, Appalachian State versus Troy. Troy comes as a 6-point favorite. Over/under is 52.5. Troy, for the second year in a row, makes this championship game. Appalachian State, I think this is their 4th time in the last 6 years, has actually made it to this conference championship game, not including 2020 because that game wasn't even played. And Appalachian State is, one of the better teams as an underdog. They have actually a Tier 1 win on their resume. It was against James Madison, second to last week of the regular season, on the road in overtime. That was that college game day game that they pulled off the huge upset there. They have a couple of Tier 2 losses to UNC, as well as on the road at Wyoming. So, and on the other side, Troy got to 10 wins for the second consecutive year. Going for that win number 11 again. The only 2 losses were in Tier 1. They were on the road at Kansas State and to, the one-loss James Madison team week 3. So this team started off 1-2 and has won, their last 8 games or 9 games to get to this point. I think they clinched a spot in the conference championship game a long, long time ago. I think it was at least, second week of November, if not, it was, I don't know. I think it was the beginning of November. They clinched their conference championship because their division's so weak. But either way, get to some of the stats, guys. Appalachian State has a much better offense. Troy has a much better defense. Both about even in strength of schedule and record strength as well. Troy is 23-5 as the home favorite in the last 5 years, but Appalachian State as the away underdog. Get this, guys. They are tied for the highest win percentage since 2018 as a underdog. They're tied also with another team later in this list. I'll get to that later on in this video. They are the highest win percentage in all of FBS the last 5 years as an underdog. So that just goes to show you that when Appalachian State is has their backs against the wall, they know how to get the job done. And honestly, I think they get the job done. I think Appalachian State not only covers a 6-point spread, I think they win this game straight up over Troy, claim their 3rd Sunbelt Championship since 2018. This will be their 4th appearance. This will be, and I think they win this. This will be their 3rd outright championship. They'll move to 9-4, but I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a good game, guys, but I think Appalachian State ultimately wins. Moving on to the Mountain West. Boise State Broncos taking on the surprising 9-3 UNLV Runnin' Rebels. Boise State actually on the road is a 2.5-point favorite. Over/under is 59. Boise State has they played Tier 1 and Tier 2 teams. Washington was the Tier 1 team. Obviously, Washington's 12-0, undefeated, number 3 in the CFP. So that's obviously they're by far their best team they play this year. They also have a Tier 2 loss. I do believe that was on the road at Fresno State. On the other side, UNLV has only played one Tier 1 or Tier 2 team, and that was Michigan, week 2. They actually scored on them, one of the few teams that did before the month of November. Other than that, they have the 101st ranked straight the schedule. Meanwhile, Boise State has played a little more tougher out-of-conference schedule, so that's why their strength of schedule is 64. And go to the stats, both teams are basically even on offense, 50-59. Boise State has a significantly better defense, 51-95. Record strength, UNLV has accomplished a little more. They lost less, so that's why the record strength's better. Boise State, though, as an away favorite, 19-5. UNLV is 4-15 as a home underdog in the last 5 years. But UNLV has one thing going. They have actually covered the spread in 10 of their 12 games, and I think half of those they've been an underdog. So they're 10-2 against the spread this year. I think that's tied, or if not, sole possession of first place for the 2023 season. And that's why I think UNLV wins the Mountain West Championship. Straight up, and obviously cover the 2.5-point underdog spread. I think this team is just much better, and might go down as the greatest UNLV football team, I think, in history. I don't think they ever won a conference championship ever. So if they win this will definitely be one to remember for the Runnin' Rebels down there over in Las Vegas, and we'll win the Mountain West Championship. Coming up next, the American Championship. For the second year in a row, it's being hosted by Tulane Green Wave, but this time they're facing the SMU Broncos. SMU's come to this as 10-2, Tulane 11-1, and number 22 ranked in the CFP rankings. Just like last year, they were ranked, I do believe, in the last. Maybe they were. Maybe I forget if they were in the last ranking. But this year, I think, even though last year's team was really good, obviously they beat Southern Cal. I think this team might be better. They don't have bad losses, and they beat the teams they should have beaten. And the only good, really good team they played, Ole Miss, they lost at home, but they didn't have their quarterback in that one. So they have a decent Tier 2 win. I think that's over. Yeah, it's over UTSA. The very last week of the season to clinch the spot in the American Championship game. Meanwhile, SMU has the only Tier 1 team they played is Oklahoma. They actually played it pretty tight. It was only 17 points on the road, week 2. But this, they have a Tier 2 win as well. I do believe that is against either Memphis. I think it's against Memphis on the road. So their only other Tier 2 loss was on the road at TCU at the time. So this is going to be a good game, guys. Tulane's only a 3.5 point favorite. Over-under is 47. The line has moved down, I think, a good point and a half in the last 2 days. So it's really pushing towards SMU. Both teams have, like I said, you only see there's 3 Tier 1 and Tier 2 teams for SMU. 2 tier, both for those for Tulane. So the strength of schedule there, 114 and 124th ranked. So they've both played really, really easy schedules, even with the American, being the best Group of 5 conference usually every year. These strength of schedules are fairly easy, but this is going to be a defensive struggle. Tulane has a really good defense. SMU's defense isn't bad. Their offense is 24th. Tulane is 25-5 as a home favorite. SMU 4-11 as a road underdog. I think Tulane gets it done for the second year in a row, but I do believe SMU would cover the 3.5 point spread. I think it's going to be a really close field goal type game. And I think Tulane just is going to have enough. They have the quarterback coming back. I think his name is Purdy. I forget his name exactly. They have the quarterback coming back, and they got the home game advantage down in Tulane. I think that's going to be the ultimate difference in this game. I think it might be a field goal. Might be like the 2020 matchup with Cincinnati and Tulsa. Come down to the very end, and I think Tulane gets it done and goes to represent the Group of 5 for the second consecutive year out of the American Conference. Now, going to the Power 5. Some of these games, I think every single one of these games has a CFP implication. We'll just go over it one by one and, down the line and see how it is. Texas Longhorns taking on the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Texas, actually, this line's moved up, I think, a full 1.5 since Monday. It started at 14. It's up to 15.5 now to favor Texas. 15.5 points that Texas is being favored in this one. 54.5 is the over-under. Oklahoma State's 9-3. Texas is 11-1. Going over some of the the schedules. Oklahoma State has 2 Tier 1 wins. So they have Tier 1 win over Oklahoma, and they have a Tier 1 win over Kansas State. So they started off 2-2, kind of left for dead, the Tier 2 loss at Iowa State. And then they won 5 in a row, including 2 ranked wins against Kansas, and then a huge upset win started November against Oklahoma at home. And then the next week, the wheels just fell off. They lost by 6 touchdowns to UCF, who didn't even make a bowl game this year. And basically had to hold on the last 2 weeks against very easy newcomers, Houston and BYU, to hold on to their spot in the Big 12 championship game to make it here. So they started off slow, had that 5-game win streak in the middle, looking really good, looking really hot. And then they kind of limped to the finish line, but still held on. They have like I said earlier, with Appalachian State, they are tied with the best win percentage in the last 5 years as an underdog. So that's the one thing that Oklahoma State has going for them in this game. Meanwhile, Texas, on the other hand, they look that September and even after they lost to Oklahoma, they still look pretty good going through October. Then the injury with Quinn Ewers happened, and it looked like Texas might go limp. I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Season might get blown off track because of the injury, but he came back in time, and I forget if he played in that Kansas State game. They had an overtime win against Kansas State. Huge, crucial, clutch win for them. That was one of their 2 Tier 1 wins. The other one obviously was in Tuscaloosa to defeat Alabama. Probably, I would say, the second best win of the entire year. I would only put Michigan's ahead over Ohio State as a slightly better, singular win on the college football schedule. But they finished 11-1, and this might be their best team and their best chance at a championship probably since Colt McCoy's there, guys. I mean, that 2009 team was stacked, and that was, they were clearly the second best team. This team, they're going to need some help, obviously. I think the only way they get in is if they win and Florida State loses, and because the Pac-12 will play itself out. No matter what happens in the SEC, if Alabama beats Georgia, they have to have Florida State has to lose, and that's the only way Texas will get in. But this game, in and of itself, 43-11 Texas is as a favorite, even in neutral site games. They have the 10th hardest strength of schedule in the current country. Obviously, that game in Tuscaloosa was insanely difficult, and they came in with a 10-point victory. But that Big 12 slate, Kansas, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Iowa State, and then finally against Texas Tech, that was just a freaking, the entire Big 12 is always going to be just a murderer's row. They're not going to be any elite teams, top 3 usually, but those 10, the 15 to 30 type ranked games are just, it's insane. To make it only with one loss is truly remarkable for them. And I think this is their team, for going to be a long time. I don't know if Ewers is coming back. I think he is. So overall, who do I think is going to win this game? I think Texas is going to win. I think it's just going to be too much for the Cowboys, even though they have, even though they've lived into this. I think Oklahoma State still covers, though. I think they're really good against the spread this year. Texas hasn't been that good against the spread, although, again, they're 11-1. So, will this be kind of a repeat of the 2021 game, where the favorites, favored by a couple touchdowns and they lose? I don't think Texas is going to lose this game. I just think it might be within 10. 15.5 is a lot for this kind of game, guys. That's why I'm picking Oklahoma State in the spread. Texas is going to win. Oklahoma State covers. Texas moves to 12-1. Big 12 champ would need help from Louisville to get into the CFP, but if they win, it's going to put a lot of pressure because this game's at noon. The ACC and the SEC games are following after that, so we'll have to see what happens in the succession after that, guys. The next game is the Big Ten Championship. The final Big Ten Championship with 2 divisions, the West versus the East, where they all go to, the newcomers come in and they are rid of divisions. So this is the final, Iowa won the Big Ten West for the last time. Jeez, good riddance. And, Michigan won the East for the last time, and then it'll just be, 1 through 16 or 1 through 18, how many teams are coming in next year. Top 2 will win go to the Big Ten Championship. But either way, go down the schedule. Iowa is 10-2. This team might be one of the most surprising and just, I don't know how to describe it. Like, underdog mentality, just inconceivable way this team got to 10 wins is absolutely remarkable to me. They lost in what game was that? They lost in their 5th game of the season. They lost Cade McNamara. Right after that, they lost their starting tight end, Eric All. And then 3 weeks ago at least, maybe it was a month ago, they lost their best player overall, one of the best players in the entire country, Cooper DeJean. Their cornerback / returner, do-it-all guy. He went down with a season-ending injury, and this team still got to 10 wins. Yes, they played in the Big Ten West. Their strictly schedule was only 58. Their out-of-conference wasn't necessarily tough at all. But to get to 10 wins with Deacon Hill as your quarterback, averaging less than 225 yards, total yards per game. I mean, this is just remarkable. How much this team is stuck together. Their defense is just playing otherworldly and just kept them in every single game. I mean, they scored more than 20 points. Since October 7th, they scored 20 or more points once. They are 5-1 in those games. 5-1 in those games. That is absolutely remarkable, guys. In the only game they lost, their defense only gave up 12 points. That Minnesota game where DeJean returned the kick and they called a fair catch, I'm sure a lot of Iowa fans are still like, bro, you take that away. Iowa is 11-1 and might even be, top 12, might even be in the top 10, and could possibly, they would never put him in there, but just in the cusp of making the CFP if those refs make the correct call and don't call that a fair catch. But either way, it happened. They lost to Minnesota. They're still in this game. They won it, I think, with at least two games to spare, not 3, because they had the tiebreakers with second-place teams in that division. But this team, like I said, just persevered through it all. Kirk Ferentz, I think he was probably second in the Big Ten Coach of the Year behind Northwestern's head coach. I mean, what he did was remarkable. But Kirk Ferentz putting together 10 wins with this roster, unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. And it's not like their stats are that bad. The only Tier 1 loss they have is at Penn State. They got crushed, but they have 2 Tier 2 wins. Against, I think it was at Iowa State early in the season, and then it's either Nebraska or at Nebraska or at Wisconsin. One of those two would qualify as a Tier 2 win because it's on the road. So And their offense, again, they have the second, or the worst total offensive yardage in the entire country of their defense, though. Look at that. Number 3 in the entire country in defense. That's how they win. That's how they've always won since Kirk Ferentz has been there. And that's what they continue to do until he's gone. So, on the other side, Michigan Wolverines. The most talked about, clicked about, just, I don't even know how to describe it. I'm a Michigan fan. Obviously, that's no secret what I've been through. It's just, this team has just been off the field. I've never seen a team have more controversy and more possible distractions off the field for the last month and a half of the season that I can remember in any recent memory. And this team, somehow, some way, pushed through it all, persevered, bowed up, without their head coach, without their, cheating guy, whatever it was. I'm not going to get into that. And just won games. They're flat out better than everybody. They finished the season with their 2 biggest games in the entire season. They backloaded their schedule again for the second year in a row. Played at Penn State, beat them by 9 without Jim Harbaugh. Played at Maryland, only won by a touchdown, won without Harbaugh. And obviously last week, the last time we will see the game with that magnitude and that stakes, they still won without Harbaugh, 30-24. And just stamp their mark as just saying, we're just a great team, and no matter what happens, it's player-led, and we're just better than you. So this team persevered through it all and has just won big game after big game after game, and just shut up the haters. And again, everything, all that freaking hurricane that came through, it ended after they beat Ohio State. And immediately, nothing else happened. They quieted all the excuses. No, you can't win without the cheating guy. You can't win with. Okay, it's done. They won all their games, and now they're going to move on. And it's been quiet this entire week. Stats wise, obviously they beat Penn State, Ohio State with their 2 Tier 1 wins. Their only Tier 2 win was either UNLV, Rutgers, or Maryland. I forget which one that was. I mean, either way, they faced one of those 3 teams that's really pretty decent. Not a great team, but good team. Top 10 in offense, number 2 ranked defense, right in front of Iowa. 5th record strength. Obviously, have a weaker strength of schedule, but 54-8 as the favorite in games the last 5 years, while Iowa is 9-14 as the underdog. Ultimately, Michigan is a 21.5 point favorite. I think they not only win the game, but they cover that spread. Iowa just has. I think one of the bets in the over/under was Iowa's 0.5 points in first half and 0.5 points in the second half. So they really think that this game might be, 24-0 Michigan? I don't think it's going to be a blowout like the 2021 team, especially with, some of these injuries these teams had. I think if Michigan even gets up by 14, I mean, that seems like an almost insurmountable, deficit for Iowa's offense that can barely, get past the 50-yard line without forcing a turnover. I think if they're up 21, I think Jim Harbaugh is going to call off the dogs. And, if Michigan does win, I think this will be one of the most cringe / clickbait opportunities you'll ever see. Tony Petitti having to hand over the Big Ten championship trophy to Jim Harbaugh after what happened the last month and a half of the Big Ten. Either way, I think Michigan wins this and they cover and win their 3rd consecutive Big Ten championship in the last version of this Big Ten championship. Moving on to the ACC, the Louisville Cardinal taking on the undefeated Florida State Seminoles, coming in at number 4 in the CFP. Louisville looked like they could be one of the teams, like dark horses down the stretch, that could steal a spot from one of these, bigger teams. And then, that loss to Kentucky at home. Oh man, that was just devastating for this team. They were number 10 going into that game, lost by 7. That was just a bad loss. They could have easily moved up to number 8. I don't think we would have had to Alabama. It would have moved up to 9. It would have caused some serious discussion saying, do they deserve to be in there if Alabama and Texas lose, kind of thing. But that went out the window. That was a bad loss. So, actually, they're 14th in the CFP. I was looking at the power ratings. Florida State's 4th in the CFP. All they have to do is win. They win this game. I don't think there's any way you could justify what they've accomplished this season. They beat LSU week 1, and they beat on the road at Clemson, at the end of September, and they just survived, the ACC schedule. They beat a good Duke team by 3 scores. They beat Miami. They beat Florida on the road last week without their quarterback. I mean, it's you can say the eye test, the power ratings, whatever you want to say. This team's better than this. Florida State's earned their spot. If they win, they're in. I don't see any conceivable way that you could possibly say a Power 5 champ, no matter what conference it's in, goes undefeated, wins the last game of the season, wins their conference championship, while other one or other 2 team would be in, win their titles and say, no, this other team, even though they have 1 loss, is better than the undefeated Power 5 conference champ. I don't think it's possible. Florida State wins, they're in. They lose, they're out. It's simple as that. Because Ohio State's not playing, and Ohio State would need like all four things to happen. Even if only 3 happen, they're not getting in. So they would need 4 teams in the succession to lose. I think Ohio State would need Georgia to lose, Florida State to lose, Texas to lose, and then they'll actually need 3 of those teams. So either way, Florida State's in if they win. And I think this is going to be a brutal matchup. Florida State's only a 2.5-point favorite. I think everybody's looking a little much too into that last week against Louisville and Kentucky. Kentucky destroyed Florida. Florida then, took Florida State to the brink. And, it was only at 9 points. So that game went down to the wire. And so now this team, without their quarterback, they're playing for a conference championship. The first ever time, by the way, Louisville's ever played for an ACC conference title. I think this is Florida State's 5th or 6th time they're playing for a conference title. Who do I think ultimately wins this game? How much they deserve to win? I do believe Louisville is going to come away with the upset, guys. And I think Louisville is going to obviously cover the 2.5 points. The numbers say they won't win. They're 9-28 as an underdog, while Florida State's 33-9 as a favorite. This game, maybe I'm basing too much on emotion, and Florida State, too much with the quarterback, and I don't know. I just think that Louisville's going to win this game, and they're going to move to 11-2, probably moving into the top 10, with that big win. But I think Florida State's going to be left out of the CFP. Just a brutal, terrible, unfortunate way to end your season, especially when you have a Heisman-level type quarterback playing for them and goes out with that brutal leg injury. It's just so bad for them. We wouldn't be having this same discussion if Jordan Travis was playing for this team. We'd be like, there's no chance with their quarterback. They win, they're in. Either way. This one, it's like, do they look as good? So I think it's all going to be put to rest, though. All that talk's going to be for naught, because I think Louisville wins this game. They come away with a big upset and become their first time ever being ACC conference champs. Next one, the SEC championship. 11-1 Alabama versus 12-0 for the 3rd consecutive year, the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia opened up as a 4 or 4.5 point favorite. It's now moved up to 6 points favorite for Georgia. 54.5 over under. Georgia's first, Alabama's 8. Basically, if this is a quarterfinal matchup, whoever wins I would say whoever wins is in, but Alabama would need some help, I do believe, because they lose the tiebreaker to Texas, who is already ranked ahead of them, has the same identical record as them, and would also be a Power 5 conference champ. So they would need, for Alabama to get in, they would need to win, Florida State to lose, and Texas to lose. Alabama slides in over those 2 teams and slides in over a non-division, non-conference champ, 11-1 Ohio State. So, and then Georgia, I don't know how far they would drop. That's going to be another debate. Does Georgia get in even if they lose? I mean, there's a strength of schedule of 55. Yes, they played a great Missouri team, a great Mississippi team, and a pretty good Tennessee team. Other than that, though, I mean, they beat it. South Carolina didn't make a bowl. Kentucky 7-5. They beat Louisville. Yeah. Auburn sucks. Georgia Tech obviously isn't good. Vanderbilt isn't good. Florida didn't make a bowl game. So besides those 3 games, like I don't know what else we could really say about them getting into it. So Georgia, I think, might be out if they lose this game, honestly. Alabama would need some help. Obviously, they need to win to get in. So going down the schedules, though, Alabama obviously had that loss to Texas, and then ever since they benched Milroe after that for the South Florida game, ever since then he's been playing lights out, just balling. I don't understand why they benched him in the first place. Dude's just a monster. Every one of the statistics shows they have 4 wins against Tier 2. They've played 7 Tier 1 and Tier 2 teams. Georgia has played 6 Tier 1 and Tier 2 teams. Ultimately, Georgia 71-5 as the favorite. Alabama only been the underdog twice in the last 5 years. Twice. And it was to the Georgia, both in 2021 season. They were an underdog in the SEC championship game and the national title game, of which obviously they won the SEC, and Georgia won the national title that year. So this game is so hard to pick. Offense is basically even. Defense is practically even. Record strength basically even. Who do I pick? Who do I think is going to win this game? I think it'll be Georgia. I think they're too good of a team. I think ultimately Carson Beck is going to be the difference. Dude was looking like an average quarterback his first 2-3 weeks. Developed into probably a top 10 quarterback in the whole country right now. Jalen Milroe is obviously a little better, but he's going to need to beat them through the air. And that's the only way you really beat Georgia is passing the ball. And we're going to have to see if the receivers are up to the task against Georgia. I don't think they are. I think this will be close. It might be a push, 6 points. Alabama covering, but I think Georgia will win the game. They will march on to their second consecutive SEC championship and haven't lost a game since Alabama 2 years ago. And I think they're going to be in a lock, the #1 seed, for the second year in a row as the CFP #1 slot. Now, the biggest game of conference championship weekend, the last time we ever see the Pac-12 championship, it's the biggest game we've ever seen. Number 5 Oregon Ducks taking on number 3 Washington Huskies. The winner of this game is in the playoffs. The loser is out. It's simple as that. Oregon lost to this team, what week was it? I think it was the second week of October 10-14. So Washington, up until that point, even through that game, looked like the one of the, if not the best team overall as we play in this year. Ever since that game, though, I do believe Washington has kind of taken a couple steps down from the way they were playing. I mean, they had they beat Oregon 36-33, and then the very next week played Arizona State, only won by 8. They beat Stanford by 9 points. Played a really high-scoring game against USC, which, again, they're going to give up points to Southern Cal, but then they played a 7-point game against Utah, kind of just, kind of struggling through that. And then they had a really tough, really good win on the road at Oregon State in the rain. And then last week, I don't know what it is. Everybody was giving crap about Washington State. Like, this is a rivalry game, and Washington State was fighting for their postseason lives at 5-6. They needed a last-second field goal to win, but that was still, everybody says that was why was it close? They haven't been playing as well. They're 12-0. If you play the 41st strength of schedule, but you have the #1 record strength, and you're 12-0, you've obviously accomplished something. You've obviously had to go through the gauntlet of playing really, really good teams. I mean, look at this. They have 3 wins over Tier 1 teams. They have a win over Oregon, obviously. They have a win over Utah, and they have a win on the road at Oregon State. 2 Tier 2 wins at Arizona and at Southern Cal. I mean, those 5 games right there, I don't know how anybody can come unscathed with that. And you'd be like, they haven't been playing well. It doesn't matter. If you beat those teams, if you win those games, it doesn't matter if you win by 25, you win by 5, or win by 1. You won. So the whole talk of, this, that's why I'm shocked the spread is 9.5 points. Again, spread is more of an indication of just how they think the flow will go. It doesn't necessarily mean the game will be close or a blowout or something like that. It's just, I'm just shocked that this many people are picking against Washington, basically leaving them for dead when this team has been through it all. So then we go to the other side of the Oregon Ducks, who many people feel, Bo Nix right now is the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman Trophy, and deservedly so. They've just been absolutely murdering everybody, this whole season. Besides that, obviously the loss to Washington, their closest game was to Southern Cal, and that was 9 points. I mean, destroyed. They put up 81 on Portland State. They beat on the road at Texas Tech. They had a pick 6, obviously, at the end there to win. I mean, they destroyed Colorado to shut their season down, basically, for the rest of the season. They beat Washington State by 2 scores. They beat Utah 35-6. Cal 63-19. Destroyed Arizona State, and then they beat, last week, their rival, Oregon State 31-7 to make a move into this position with a chance to clinch the CFP berth no matter what happens. So, I mean, the offense is really good. Both top 10. Defense, Washington was really good on defense up until the last few weeks of the season. Oregon's defense has stayed strong in the top 10. I mean, the record strength, though, Washington's first. I mean, it's, again, I said it earlier, they've earned that #1 record strength ranking. Oregon's not far behind at 9, with the 1 loss, so both have played, pretty mid strength of schedules, and that's why I think Oregon's put up a lot of gaudy numbers against really bad teams. I mean, you take away Oregon, or you take away Washington and Utah. I mean, who's their best team to play was Oregon State. So, and they have 4 losses. Just go down some of these stats. Oregon is 49-6 as a favorite the last 5 years. Washington is 5-9 as an underdog. So this greatly favors Oregon, and that's the over/under. Oregon is 9.5 point favorite. Over/under 65.5. Obviously, all these stats go into consideration for Vegas. And ultimately, who do I think will win the final Pac-12 championship game? I think it's going to be Oregon, and I do believe Oregon will cover this spread. I said earlier, I don't know why it's this high, but the more I think about it, the more I look at the numbers, I just think they're playing better, and I think how much Washington should be given this much disrespect. I feel like Oregon still is going to win this game, and they're going to win it by a couple more than 1 score. And Oregon, I do believe if they win, they're almost assured lock to be number 3. I don't think Florida State will move up even if they win. I think they'll be a lock. Plus, I think if Michigan beats Iowa, which is, almost like a sure thing, it's gonna be shocking to the college football world if Michigan loses that. If Oregon or Washington win, I think whoever wins this game will be locked in number 3, and we'll play Michigan in the Rose Bowl. Well, it's funny because both will be conference members next season, but the final version of the Rose Bowl, Big Ten versus Pac-12 iteration, and I think that's going to be Oregon. So, I don't know what else to say about that, guys. I think Oregon's going to win the Pac-12, and this will conclude, the best week of the season. Who do you think is going to have do you think there's going to be any major upsets in this conference championship weekend? Who do you think is going to be the most surprising team? Do you think Florida State is going to get in even with the win, or do you think they somehow move them out? Do you think Texas is going to somehow beat this team again, move in, or do you think Alabama somehow sneaks their way back into the playoff, guys? Let me know in the comments below. Follow me on Twitter, SportsNerd92. This is the last week of the regular season. Maybe have some bowl matchups, later on in the year, but just enjoy this, guys. Let me know in the comments below who do you think is going to win every single one of these games, and I guess we'll have some live reactions over the weekend with the YouTube Shorts. Until then, guys, enjoy it. It's going to be a fun one.